Jack's Corner, where conservative values meet national headlines, and truth and reality have a seat at the table. From Louisville, Kentucky, here's your host, Jack Richardson.
Well, welcome back to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality has a seat at the table. The news is coming at us very fast, so I'm going to jump right into it. As history is being made by the minute, it is hard to keep up. But most recently, President Trump's announcement on Tuesday night of the proposal for the U.S. to take over Gaza is another grand example of thinking outside the box. I see so many positives to this creative proposal to secure peace in the Middle East that it is marvelous that we have someone in the presidency that is thinking for a change. Common sense is in charge. We are already saving $1 billion a day. Countries who initially opposed us are cooperating, from Panama and Denmark as it relates to Greenland. Trump is revealing the bankruptcy and corruption of the Democrats. This latest announcement regarding Gaza is too new and fresh to really dig into the details, and I will have more to say about that later. But after all the lives and billions we have lost there on failed strategies, it's time we get something out of it, namely peace. Now, I want to revisit something that I don't take any pleasure in, but I want to revisit the issue with regards to Senator Mitch McConnell. And before I get into any detail here on McConnell's 60 Minutes appearance, let's begin with this. Of the last 16 years, Republicans were only in power 4 of that. The old establishment, who were more concerned about their image and how they would be perceived, delivered us defeat after defeat. The old guard, the old establishment types are good at one thing: losing. They can spin a good tale on the communist propaganda organ called 60 Minutes with carefully framed questions and answers, but the old guard Republicans cannot hide from their disastrous losing record over the last 15 to 20 years. So when you start hearing the nice-sounding word salads they give to cover their rear ends, that is when I say, hey, let's start with the consequences and the messes we are in and work our way backward to find out who made all these bad decisions. You know, a 4-12 season is not a good record in any sports game, much less politics. Now, with that in mind, I want to address Mitch's 60 Minutes appearance. Why now? Here we have the master of the so-called long game, which benefits only the 80-year-olds, and only God knows the damage that is done during that time it takes to get to the promised land. But I asked Mitch and others, why 60 Minutes now? The 60 Minutes piece was a hit job. This wasn't being a good team player. This complicated your hand-picked new majority leader, Thune. Before I dive into that, let it be clear that I do not dislike Mitch. I've known him too long, and I know his game plan. He calls it the long game. Well, how many people have to die and how many people have to suffer during that period of time? But my loyalties are to the people first. I'm nobody's lapdog. But as I pointed out in my previous podcast and articles, the many times Mitch has been wrong are numerous. He is not an omniscient being. He has done many good things, but it's time for new ideas and fresh blood, because before Trump took office, we were in the most dangerous place we have ever been in the history of this country, as far as our basic constitutional freedoms were concerned. Yes, you will hear McConnell complain about the bad things the Democrats were doing, but he never came up with a solid plan to defeat them like Trump has and is doing. No long game here. Relief is needed now, and Trump is delivering it. In the 60 Minutes piece where Mitch was promoting his book, he clearly lost sight of the fact that his constituents in Kentucky gave Trump a win over Harris by 31 points. I'm not going to spend much more time on Mitch other than to say that his walking into the lion's den of 60 Minutes, whose reporters and commentators have never been introduced to the truth, was terrible given how he handled the questioning. But this wasn't just a misstep. It was a planned and coordinated hit job. It was a betrayal of Republican voter trust. As an attorney and he and I are both attorneys. For him to tolerate the grossly leading and over-the-top partisan questions by Lesley Stahl was nauseating. There is no judge in the country that would have allowed the kind of leading questions in any courtroom that Stahl was engaged in. Stahl was not a neutral observer looking for information. She was a crass and wicked leftist looking to give her toxic and cancerous opinions air, using this glamour segment with Mitch as a cover. She had an anti-Trump agenda, spicing up her questions with falsehoods, and McConnell did nothing to counter it. My dear Kentucky Republicans, you need to get your ducks in a row. Our once conservative senator is failing you. One last point on this. McConnell called the January 6th an insurrection. I've never known there to be an insurrection with no guns. They fear Trump will expose the lies, and that is why they shredded all the evidence. That is why Biden pardoned everyone that had anything to do with the J6 committee and hearings. They all belong in jail, including the two Republicans, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. Here's the bottom line. Don't listen to these puff pieces choreographed by the enemy. Just reflect back on where we were, the trouble we were in, and the God that is now extracting us from those horrible times. I don't enjoy calling Mitch out, but it is necessary, just as it was when he tried to defeat Rand Paul in favor of a very liberal Republican. I needed to set the record straight and give the truth and reality a seat at the table, and I will continue to speak out when the truth is hidden and when Republicans act like Democrats. Now I want to move on to another update. There's so much news in the last 2 weeks that basically anything that's 24 hours old is almost old news. But here's an update for you on the false prophet heretic of a Bishop Budde, who had the temerity to lecture Trump on his inauguration at the National Cathedral. Now we find out that Budde's Episcopal Migration Ministries collected $53 million from government programs in 2023 for immigrant resettlement. Now we're getting a good picture of who this fraud was, dressed in clerical robes and lecturing our president in the National Cathedral on the day after the inauguration. Folks, all too often Satan parades around in clerical robes. The left and its headquarters in the Democrat Party is the devil's playground. You have been helping to fund the deconstruction of your country. The false prophets in many of our religious institutions are helping them. It is evil at the worst and stupidity at its best. There can be no peace with the Democrats as they are Satan's foot soldiers. I rest my case on their voting records. Recently, Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat in New York, the Democrat congressman from New York, who is next in line to be the Speaker of the House, placing him third in line to the presidency if he did become Speaker, is one of the most anti-American, divisive, and policy-wise communists in the nation. Just a few days ago, on January 31st, he called for violence during a recent press conference in Brooklyn, where he called on Americans to fight back against Trump's extreme agenda in the streets, implying a call to violence. Isn't that what they accused Trump of? Never mind that the people spoke loudly on November 5th in a landslide ousting the Democrats. Marxist communists never learn nor care what the people want. These are the real enemies of America, the real enemies of humanity. They are a threat to your life, liberty, and happiness. Don't be naive. There is no sin in hating evil, and these people are the incarnation of evil and promote it at every opportunity they get. I've studied it all my life, and I have yet to ever see an exception. Everything associated with the left and the Democrat Party is wicked to its core, as is reflected in every vote they take and every policy position they take and propose. Likewise, there is nothing that you should be tolerating with the Democrats and the things that they propose today, no more than we tolerated what the redcoats were doing in the 1770s and those dressed in the gray in the 1850s. Basically, the truth is not in the Democrats. Don't miss the significance of the crucial times that we are in. And I will end this segment on why the Democrats hate Trump and conservatives with this. They hate the truth and they live a lie. From marriage between same sex to boys becoming girls and girls to becoming boys, and pedophiles only to be considered as minor attracted adults, and drag queen shows for children. This is what the Democrat Party has become today, and that's why they lost in the big landslide they did back on November the 5th. Now I want to move to another topic, and that is basically, it's time to shut up and let Trump do his job. He's getting things done. For instance, Trump's Pentagon just gave the boot to NBC, New York Times, the NPR, and Politico to make room for the New York Post, Breitbart News, One American News Network. This is great. Get rid of the leftist propagandist media. If there is anywhere where we need sound thinking, it's in the Pentagon. The next thing Trump has done is, just recently, I think it was Sunday, he suspended all U.S. aid to South Africa after they passed a law on land expropriation, which many fear could lead to a Zimbabwe-style seizure of lands owned by white citizens. Whites are being murdered and driven off their lands, and their farms are being confiscated by the black communist government. Yes, we aided that disaster too, when we let the media turn Nelson Mandela, a Marxist, into a hero. And he was in jail for a good reason. Once again, stupid and evil liberals and the Democrats in this country destroyed a once thriving country in South Africa, allowing the black communists to take over. And now they are murdering the whites. Do you know that South Africa has received $273 million from the U.S. in 2023? And Reuters News puts that sum at $440 million. This is a great move on Trump's behalf. He is leading and stopping American wealth being used to prop up communists. This is just one of many examples. In Mexico, like Colombia, they capitulated on the migrant crisis after Trump threatened tariffs. Colombia is now taking migrants back. Venezuela is taking migrants back. Mexico has now agreed to send 10,000 troops to its border to shut down the flow. Denmark's prime minister is now open to the U.S. expanding its presence in Greenland. And Canada is ready to negotiate after Trump threatened tariffs and will spend $1.3 billion on its border security. The left tried to scare you that tariffs are bad and will raise your cost. Those who say that either have a hidden agenda or they are just plain stupid. Let me ask you this. What's more expensive and damaging to America? A 25% tariff on Mexico, or the cost of supporting 15 million illegal immigrants flooding across our borders, along with fentanyl and the 100,000 deaths that it has caused? That's almost 2 Vietnam Wars. You see, the corrupt left spread their fear about tariffs. They are wrong and never tell you of the cost of not imposing tariffs. And here is a good one for you. The tariffs Trump imposed in his first term were never removed by Biden. So leave Trump alone and let him do his job. It's all working because it takes a strong man to get things done in the world's most powerful nation. After all, the hand-wringing and naysayers that Trump was going to be a catastrophe, they are now proven wrong, and America is winning for a change. Oh, and let's not forget Panama. Here's the good news on that too. Secretary of State Marco Rubio succeeded in convincing Panama's President Jose Mulino to opt out of renewing its agreement with China regarding the Belt and Road Initiative. That's China's plan to become the world dominant power. Mulino confirmed on Sunday, after meeting with Rubio during his visit to Panama, that Panama would not be renewing the BRI agreement with China. Don't forget, Panama was given away by Jimmy Carter, who's now answering for his sins. After Trump threatened to take Panama back with force if necessary, Panama tore up the Chinese agreement and will rid their control over the canal. Let's talk about the confirmation process in the Senate of Trump's nominees for a moment. Democrats are obstructionists. They have slow-walked and tried to block most all of Trump's nominees. This is not in the best interest of the country. They have never operated on the basis of what is in the best interest of the country, only their own. Folks, watch the outrageous conduct of these psychopaths in their questioning of the cabinet appointees. I couldn't have been any clearer in my book, America's Systemic Psychosis, as to the corrupt and malevolent nature of the left and particularly the Democrats. Only 57% of Trump's nominees have been confirmed, far below Obama's, Bush's, and Clinton's, who were far over 2/3 of their appointments at this same time. But think about this, which makes this percentage even worse. Trump had all of his appointees picked earlier than most any other president-elect. That makes what the Democrats are doing treasonous. Think about this. The Secretary of Transportation was only approved the day before the horrendous American Airlines crash in D.C. last week. We have a huge country to run with threats all around us, and the Democrats clearly don't give a damn. Do yourselves a favor and watch how they acted on live TV during the confirmation process where the media couldn't protect them and edit out their bad conduct. Here is another example of how sick the Democrats are. Before the California fires, Governor Gavin Newsom convened the legislature to get passed a $50 million authorization to Trump-proof California. A few days later, when the fires broke out, they were begging Trump for help. When it becomes apparent that California needed Trump's help, they put the $50 million anti-Trump bill on hold, only to go ahead with it and approve it later. So why are the Democrats doing this? They know the crimes they have committed and fear being discovered. This is a lesson for every Republican. Never, never, never forget there is no moral equivalency with the Democrats. Next time there is a tragedy and you hear a Democrat say, "Our thoughts and prayers are with you," ask them what God did they pray to, as 2/3 of them are atheists. Of course, we have some really, really bad Republicans, the Romney types. The one close to home for my listeners over in Indiana is Todd Young. When he first ran, he was the conservative darling. Now he is acting like he's being blackmailed. He is a disgusting betrayal to the Republican cause. So to my Hoosier friends, come primary time, get him out of office. He is out of touch with Indiana values. As I've said before, the likes of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and other Democrats, and yes, some Republicans, they will all be forgotten within 10 years from now. But there will be some who will be remembered. In fact, hundreds of years from now, one of those will be Donald Trump. Those who serve the people, not themselves, are the ones that will be remembered. Now I want to jump to something else that basically just exemplifies just how out of touch the Democrats continue to be. And are they learning anything from the last election? Are they modifying their radical stances that lost them the election? No. Here's an example. David Hogg, and he is a hog for media attention. He thrust his face into the cameras as soon as he could after a school shooting where he was attending. He was an over-animated, shrill social climber and egotist seizing upon the opportunity to become famous. And so far he has, because he was a freelance prostitute for the gun control lobby, waving himself before every camera in the Democrat Party who took the bait. Hogg is a self-aggrandizing climber whose only interest is himself. Uneducated because he is a fame hog, he is the Greta Thunberg of the anti-Second Amendment. Watch out for this guy because the Dems have just made him vice chair of the Democrat Party. Hogg has never won a debate on the issue of gun confiscation and in fact can't debate. One of his most famous disasters was when a Chinese immigrant, after reciting of all the millions of people that were killed under communism, asked Hogg if he could guarantee her that Washington, D.C. would never turn tyrannical if she gave up her guns. He said no. Then she replied, "Then debate is over. I will never give up my guns." Yes, she lived through the horrors of the consequences of what Hogg is promoting. Gunless people cannot defend themselves from tyranny. That is why the Democrats want your guns. It is people like Hogg and the Democrats who have an authoritarian character and attitude desiring to control everyone's lives. Now Hogg is vice chair of the Democrat Party, which always dredges up the next fame seeker to torture us with their insanity. Just keep an eye out for this guy. He's been given a platform, which is cocaine for a narcissist, making him the next potential danger on the horizon. Now, to close things out for today, here's a little factoid for you to help cement some things in your mind and something to help you get rid of your tolerance for any of your Democrat friends or family members, if you have any left. The Biden administration made improper payments totaling $236 billion through 71 federal agencies in 2023. We have just now found this out. Think about that. Think about those billions, $236 billion. You know that works out to $715 per man, woman, and child in America. Just think about what you could do with $715 right now. Folks, stop trusting the Democrats, as I call them. Stop trusting them for anything. So with that closes out the podcast for today, and thank you for being with us. I'm Jack Richardson.